but I'm Sarah Shanley Hope, Vice President of Brand and Partnerships with the Solutions Project. So excited for this conversation. The Solutions Project operates really at the juncture between philanthropy and the climate justice movement. And now we're making more than $10 million in grants every year to nearly 100 grassroots organizations led mostly by women of color and nearly all in communities of color at the front lines of the climate crisis. And in addition to the grant making, our role is really to amplify the stories, the solution stories, the visions and the strategies of our partners who are innovating in climate justice solutions on the front lines. This conversation we have been having a lot in 2021, and this conversation is really focused on the technological innovations that our frontline partners, three of whom you'll hear from today, are bringing into their communities and doing so in a way that's really leading the way for all of us who care about solving the climate crisis. And this conversation is disruptive because there is oftentimes an incorrect assumption that frontline communities, those communities closest to the problems, do not have the solutions and in particular the technological solutions. And that is simply not the case. And we're excited for you to learn about that today. Quick housekeeping for our audience. We are going to invite questions towards the end of our time today, our hour together, but you're welcome to put into the little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, put in questions that you might have throughout the conversation, the moderated conversation, and we will be ready to then answer them at the end. And with no further ado, I'm really, really excited to introduce first our moderator, Dylan Siegler from Verizon. Dylan is the corporate social responsibility strategist there, and one of her top priorities is growing technology innovation to address climate justice for vulnerable communities while delivering value to the Verizon business. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Dylan to introduce our panelists.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It is an absolute honor to be here with this really fantastic panel that we have for you today. And I hope that after this short bit of talk from me, you're mostly going to hear from Leo and from Suzanne and ideally from Shamika if she makes it. So as Sarah mentioned, my role at Verizon is really about how to apply technology and connectivity to advance solutions that fight systemic inequity. And that's a big task. That's not something that one person or even one team can do within corporate America, but it's something that we are constantly learning about and trying to understand how we can actually execute on. One of the ways we do that is by trying to listen as much as we can to the communities that we want to work with and that we ultimately would love to serve. One way that we've been doing that lately is we this year launched our first social innovation accelerator. It's called Forward for Good. And along with our partner, the innovation agency, ALLY, we've really tried to frame that tech accelerator around technologies that can help reduce the disproportionate impacts that climate change has on vulnerable communities. And vulnerable in this case really means physically vulnerable or vulnerable to the economic consequences of climate change. So in other words, technologies that can advance climate justice. 7 startups had joined us, and we're really excited by what their technologies can do for communities that are at physical risk or economic risk, and specifically for frontline communities or communities that have particular systemic inequities that compound their risks in the face of climate change. So the startups that we're working with really run the gamut from, we have one that is a technology that detects wildfire so it can be extinguished in minutes and never reach homes and businesses. We also have a platform for community members to report out in real time the climate impacts that they see happening in their neighborhoods. We are really proud that the Solutions Project has been an advisor on the curriculum and has been a really great partner to Ally and to Verizon as we've made this accelerator a reality. But what we've noticed, and part of what made me really interested in joining this panel today and promoting this discussion, is that while the set of startups that we're working with is designing next gen tech that's going to have real impact on communities, this is based on documented risks, most of the tech founders are not from frontline communities themselves. That is a problem. It's something that we would do differently if we had it to do over again. And that's part of what I'd like to kind of get to today in our conversation. As throughout Climate Week NYC, industry, tech, corporates, we're all talking about how to be authentically engaged in climate justice from the perspective of where we sit in our corporations, in our philanthropies, in our funding relationships, from our government perspectives. And what we want to try and tease out is, what are the ways that we can partner with frontline communities that have a stake in technology to really actually do it better, so that it isn't some sort of set of technologists who heard one time that there was a problem that needed to be solved. It's actually the people who are experiencing the problem on the ground that are doing the solving. I'm so excited to introduce our panel, and I know that they're going to have a ton to say about this. We want to talk about where innovation and technology can be found and resourced at scale among frontline communities. And so I'd love to introduce to you the Reverend Leo Woodbury, who is the Executive Director of the New Alpha Community Development Corporation. They're based in Florence, South Carolina. We also have Suzanne Singer. She's the Executive Director and co-founder of Native Renewables, which is operating in the Navajo and Hopi nations across the state that we call Arizona. And I think right on cue, we've got Shamika Nichols, who's the Executive Director of Soulardarity in Highland Park, Michigan. And so we, knowing we have limited time today, want to dive right in. So I'm going to throw some questions out to the group. As Sarah mentioned, please, those in the audience, definitely put your questions in the Q&A, and we will get to them at the conclusion of our discussion. So I'm going to throw this one to Leo to start out. What is your mission and the climate justice technologies that your community is leading? And following Leo's answer, we'll ask the same question of Suzanne and of Shamika.
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity. We want to thank Solutions Project and Verizon. And our mission at New Alpha Community Development Corporation is to work with low and middle income communities around the issues of environmental justice, climate change, and community economic development, or as we like to say, we operate in the area of what we call environomics, where the economy and the environment meet. And we do that by dealing with water issues, with our hydro panels, with our broadband, wireless hotspots. We do it. We're working on a project now with electric bikes and charging stations. So we look at how we can ensure that we're not creating the same divides that we had in the past when it comes to education or the digital divide. And of course, to do that, that means we have to embrace technology and do it in a way that creates what we call a transition, or creating jobs for communities with a history of poverty and a history of pollution, so that we create entrepreneurial opportunities as well as jobs.
Thank you, Leo. We're going to throw this question over to Suzanne now. What's your mission? And tell us about the climate justice tech that your community leads.
Hello, Yate. So Native Renewables, our mission is to empower Native American families to achieve energy independence by helping grow their renewable energy capacity and also providing affordable access to off-grid power. The indigenous communities we're focusing on right now are the Navajo and Hopi nations within Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. And our solutions, one of the main pieces we're working on is providing power for roughly 15,000 families who do not have access to electricity or grid tied electricity. So as an organization, I love this photo of our team being silly. So as an organization, we are working with using off-grid solar installations for residential sector to provide power to these families. We're also training a local workforce, and you see some of our team here, but we want to be able to empower locally the Native people to have the skills to install and also maintain off-grid systems that we ourselves did not install. But the other piece that's really critical to what we do is educating the broader Native community about solar energy, the benefits of solar energy, but also some of the limitations that come with off-grid power. Thank you.
Great, and we'll put that same question over to Shamika, who is not, unfortunately, we're not going to see her face today due to some connectivity issues, but really happy to have you here, Shamika.
Yes, thank you so much. And I just want to say that I would love to be able to see everyone and for folks to be able to see me. But in Highland Park, we really do have like a internet reliability situation, especially once it's raining. And it's been raining for a couple of days now. So I just want to start with saying that Soulardarity started out of necessity. Highland Park residents here, and let me give some context. Highland Park is a very small city that's in the heart, centered in the heart of Detroit, Michigan. And when Highland Park residents experienced a repossession by DTE back in 2011, there was about 1,000, probably a little bit over, residential streetlights that were captured. And one of the main issues was not only the streetlights being repossessed by utility, which is not a normal thing that happens in Michigan, but that the residents were not informed until they saw that the streetlights were being taken off the ground. What's left is just stumps and some of a little bit of the infrastructure, just to remind us, that the municipality did not pay the utility bill, and this was the result. But when we came together, it was for the simple goal of restoring light to darkness, both politically as well as figuratively, because we don't have any, when you drive down our streets, you have to turn your high beams on to be able to even see residential addresses to visit someone. 10 years later, we became a locally and nationally recognized leader in energy democracy. We have about 200 members. We have a powerful staff and board, about 10 staff and about 7 board. The majority of our board are Highland Parkers. And since 2012, Soulardarity has achieved tremendous impact with minimal resources. We've restored about 17 streetlights to Highland Park. Our recent installation was over at Avalon Village, which is on Avalon Street, and on Parker Village with a matching fund donation, which is over on Buena Vista. And we also created a citywide solar streetlight plan. We partnered with Southeast Michigan Regional Energy Office, MREA, and our Power Up Bulk Purchase Program with Rider Cooperative Industries has deployed so far over $30,000 worth of solar lighting and emergency generation in Highland Park and Detroit. We've also been a part of a coalition called the Highland Park Community Crisis Coalition, where we've identified key stakeholders in Highland Park, and we're beginning to work on resiliency kits to be able to support folks during shutoffs and blackouts. We've collaborated to grow numerous community initiatives in Highland Park. We've done that through public lighting and solar projects. We've conducted education projects with Michigan Student Power Networks, Detroiters Working for Environmental Justice, East Michigan Environmental Action Council, and EcoWorks. And we've deployed education and opportunities for hundreds of youth, students, and community members of all ages on energy democracy and do-it-yourself energy saving skills. We are providing critical organized capacity to bring projects like the Equitable Internet Initiative, which I'm not benefiting from at this very moment, but also the Community Water and Energy Resource Center to Highland Park. We are anchored by the Blueprint for Energy Democracy, which we launched through various caucuses that we held a few years ago, which gave democratic and community input in terms of a plan for job creation, industry infrastructure upgrades, and et cetera. We've been active and engaged as an advocate with the Michigan Public Service Commission, which is a state-appointed governing body for our utility here. And just wanting to uplift and highlight that we are under the rule and thumb of DTE Energy, which is a utility monopoly that is happening here. It's a private company, it's not municipally owned. And so we have very, very little wiggle room in dealing with them. We have been in partnership, very, very strong partnership with MEJC, which is the Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition. And through that coalition, we were able to launch the Work for Me DTE, which is which has been recently renamed as our statewide energy democracy work. And we're advancing these goals through organizing, media, movement building. And we have been in collaboration with We Own It and Next System Projects. We released a national policy proposal for a community ownership of power administration, also referred to as COPA. And our goal is to empower communities that are being underserved by the investor-owned monopolies. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Shamika, and to the rest of the panel. We're going to dive into some questions that really get to the heart of what we're trying to discuss today. We're going to go fairly quickly through this because we've got a lot to cover, but I want to make sure that we give everyone a chance to speak on the areas that are really relevant to them. So I'm going to start with you, Suzanne. How are companies or philanthropic funders or government agencies already supporting the success of Native Renewables? Can you give us some examples of where these partnerships are working well for you?
Yeah, I am super grateful for good partners that, first of all, make my life easier. And sometimes that's giving us the flexibility in spending what we need to do. If plans change, like what happened with COVID, totally upended a lot of our efforts. They are working with us to, develop other plans and being patient with us. But also, and funders, if they can streamline and simplifying our reporting processes, I'm so happy when they're able to do that. But I think in terms of partnerships and manufacturers, good partners to us are those that can help us reduce the cost of our projects so we can make larger impacts with the same amount of funding, sometimes getting donations, sometimes providing technical support. We've also had a fantastic remote training partnership that came out of COVID. And I'll say just finish with great partners to me, are those that are respectful of our time, of our culture, our people and their privacy, but also willing to accept input and accept when we want to say no to something.
That's great. Leo, do you have really good examples of partnerships that are working well?
Oh, yes. So we have on two fronts. First, from the philanthropic community, I have to lift up the Solutions Project is one, and Ceres Family Trust and several other who don't fund so much specific programs, but fund instead general operating support or general support, and that allows us to have flexibility rather than being pigeonholed and just being able to do one project, but being flexible enough to respond to the needs of the community and the solutions that the communities are seeking. In terms of for-profit companies, we were able to, with other community partners, work with Duke Energy to construct a community solar farm that provides energy for 2,500 homes that are primarily low income communities. And also partnering with them, we were able to have 1,500 homes receive free energy efficiency upgrades, because it doesn't matter if your home is being heated and cooled by fossil fuels or renewable energy if you're heating and cooling the outdoors. We also were able to work with PD Electric Co-op in order to build a solar project at a middle school in Darlington, South Carolina. And of course, Source, which is the company that we're working with, where we have an off-grid hydro panels, which actually pulls the air in, heats it up with a thermal unit. The water condenses, goes through a filter, and then actually produces clean drinking water. And we have a small demonstration project that we want to amplify that provides 224 16-liter bottles of water a week. And so we've had tremendous success working with companies that employ clean, renewable technology, as well as our philanthropic partners who actually believe in justice and equity and a just transition.